The last topic of the day is going to be a bit more of a conceptual thing, a bit more of a opinion-based thing. There have been a lot of discussions about this over the course of the past, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years almost. Well, I guess year and a half at this point. I've been on this platform on Twitch, and it's definitely had a couple of rough encounters, I'll say. And I think this is a subject that a lot of people have strong feelings on. So consider this, if you're watching this on YouTube, your content advisory. This will be a big talk on controversial subjects, big warning sign there, flash it on the screen. But I would like to talk about my feelings regarding originality in music and regarding the subject of who you make music for. I think these are very connected, and I think one tends to lead into the other, which tends to lead back into the first one, which tends to create this very circular habit, so to speak. But I'm going to start with the second topic first, and then we're going to come back to originality. I don't believe there's such a thing as making music for yourself. I truly don't. I think every piece of music that is written with the intention of some other person hearing that music and having some sort of opinion or feeling or response to that music. Art in general tends not to be as personal a thing as we make it out to be. And to get a little bit philosophical, I actually look at this from a bit of a Hegelian perspective, Hegel being a philosopher. But Hegel is famous for his master and slave dialectic. A dialectic in philosophy is sort of a conversation or a dialogue of sort between two conflicting ideas, two ideas that rub up against each other. And you're supposed to try and synthesize, create some sort of new understanding from watching these two opposing forces interact. And in the master-slave dialectic, you have these two opposing forces. There is the master, who is the one that has control and ownership over the slave, and there is the slave who exists to serve and to obey the master. There's a lot of other people who have explained this a lot better than me. I'm actually probably going to link in the YouTube description for this a video by PhilosophyTube, another great YouTuber who does a decent performance, a good performance, I feel like that was kind of insulting, a good performance of this dialectic and sort of the interactions that come. And my extremely hyper-simplified version of it is the master is someone who seeks to be realized, who seeks to be seen. In order to be seen, the master needs an other. The master needs someone to gaze upon them and to give them validation that they exist. There is the whole thing of I think, therefore I am, all that stuff. Great conversation topic, great thing to consider. But in this kind of context, we can't truly know ourselves outside of the context of other people. Because we could just be living in a dream. We could just be having an hallucination. We could be living in a simulation. All of this could be fake. I can't guarantee that there are other people on the side of this camera. I could be just talking to myself. I don't know. I assume, seeing the chat, seeing this wonderful floating mass of text next to me, that there are people watching. People respond to what I say, but I have no proof of that. I just have evidence. But if there's someone physically here observing me, if they can acknowledge me and say to me, I see you, then I know I exist. However, at the same exact time, the presence of an other is the presence of not me. There is someone other than myself. There is the negation of myself. There can be a point in time, a point in space, in which there is not me, both in the presence of something and in the absence of myself. And that is a pretty difficult thing to wrap your head around. It's pretty rough to understand. And the dialectic goes through kind of the cycle of kind of the master and slave kind of going back and forth, and eventually the slave realizes that they are the one who has the power, because with them, the master is miserable, but without them, the master is also miserable. So the master is in a place where he or they want to kill the slave, but they can't kill the slave because otherwise they won't have anyone to look at them. Turns out the slave has the power. But we're not getting into that. The whole point of that is to focus on that act of observation of self, the validation of another, to acknowledge that we exist. But the other turn of phrase that I think is applicable here is this kind of rhetorical question of, if a tree falls in the woods and there's no one around, does it make a sound? In the concrete understanding of it, yes, obviously. It creates sound waves, it disturbs the air, and even if it's not being observed, it is creating that air pressure. But with sound being something in relation to our experience, me speaking to you creates a sound, but it's not really a sound in kind of this conceptual sense until it hits your eardrums. Until that point, it's just waves floating through molecules of oxygen and hydrogen and helium and nitrogen and whatever other friggin' bullshit molecules are floating around in our atmosphere. So when you say, I make music for myself, what you're saying is, I am making music that only exists in the context of my existence. If you put your music on any platform anywhere where another human being can conceivably listen to it, you have negated that initial statement. You have officially made that thing an impossibility, because there will invariably be an other. In the master-slave thing, you have, as the master, created something for the slave to observe, to validate that you exist, to validate that this is something that is real. You are the tree falling. You need someone else for it to make a sound, right? Now, I have plenty of music that I've written that no other human being has ever heard. Period. There are songs that I write, in essence, for myself. There are songs that I write to play for myself when I'm by myself. No one else ever hears those songs. But I recognize that when I'm writing them, I'm not really writing them just for myself. These are pieces of music that could conceptually exist in the minds, in the lives, in the experiences of another. Considering I live in an apartment complex, I have neighbors, even that music I write for myself, even that music I play for myself, has the chance of someone else hearing me. If I'm playing on my piano and I play one of my little things, that neighbor could hear it, that neighbor could hear it, any neighbor that walks by that door could hear it. That's for someone else, and I'm conscious of that. I'm totally aware of this relationship. And I can guarantee you, for almost all of those songs, there is a point where I had the idea of, oh, what would this sound like to someone else? Because humans are invariably social creatures. We seek out others. No matter how isolated or solitary we are, especially in this time of pandemic where we're all quarantined and shit, like, a lot of us understand that we're going to be, by ourselves, but we're social creatures. We want to be around others. And we can't even really know if something is music, in my opinion, until we get to the experience of playing that for another person. With all that in mind, let's pivot and talk a little bit about originality in music and how that might relate back to this idea, this myth of music for yourself or making music for only yourself. How are we defining originality? I could do a laundry list of things. Stage 1. Are you writing a melody that someone else has written before? You are no longer original. Are you using chord progressions that other people have come up with? You're no longer original. Are you using functional harmony, where there is a set of preconceived notions about how these chords should relate to each other? You're no longer original. Are you writing music using the 12 notes of the chromatic scale? You are no longer original. Are you using music that is written using microtones, where you have multiple smaller subdivisions beyond the 12 notes of the chromatic scale in your music? You're still not being original because that's been done before. Are you writing music in crazy advanced meter, like 12/26, or like 1 quarter note plus 3/8 notes? You're technically still not being original because that's a formalized system of how to group your divisions. Are you using any instrument that anyone else has ever used? You're not original. Are you making music out of noise? You're still not original. If something was truly original, in no way derivative, we would not even be able to recognize it as music, because it would just be a sound, a random collection of noise that has no correlation to anything familiar. I don't even know if we could even classify it as sound. So what's happening is we are creating an arbitrary limit on where we deem originality to come from. What Abominable just said here is a great point. There is a common meme that has circulated for probably decades at this point involving goat farming and dance music. It was, first I thought that using loops was cheating, so I made my own loops using samples. Then I thought that using samples was cheating, so I recorded my own drums. Then I thought that using someone else's drum set was cheating, so I skinned a goat and I made my own drum. I thought that that was cheating, so I raised my own goat from a baby. I still think that's cheating, but I haven't had much time to make music, what with all the goat farming and all. So it's a funny little joke. I think it's a funny little story, but it illustrates exactly what I'm talking about here. How you determine originality is almost exclusively based on how much you know about the broader scope of music. There are cultures that have musical scales containing twice the number of notes than the 12 that we are used to using. There are cultures which have rhythmic divisions that are far more complex than anything that we use in the Western European system of music. There are so many different ways of conceiving music. Things like music concrete, things like atonal music, serialism, pandiatonicism. There's so many different concepts that you're just not aware of. You've never heard of them before, so you've never even had to consider them. And guess what? If you don't know something exists and you'd come up with it, it doesn't mean you're original. It doesn't make you original. It makes you unaware. That's not a bad thing. That's not a critique on you as a person, but it does mean that you're not original. Here's the best part of all this. That doesn't matter. Originality does not matter. Everything is derivative. Everything we do, everything we create is in some way derivative. Even we as human beings are derivative because we are a product of our parents. We are a product of our upbringing. We are a product of our environment and our experiences. All of these things create the unique us. We can be unique, but we can't be original. We can do something better, but you can't be original with that. It's not possible. It's not physically possible for you to be original, but you can be unique. Here's the fun part that we circle back around to validation and writing music for yourself. How do you determine something is unique? How do we decide that something, anything, is unique? By comparing it, by looking at what else there is in the world and relating it to that, by getting external validation. Sorry, I got excited, I shouted, I apologize for that. But my point is, if I need to be unique, how can I know I'm unique if I don't have something that's derivative or boring or unoriginal or standard or default or whatever fucking adjective you want to use, positive, negative, or neutral? In that moment, it has moved away from music for myself to music for others. Music that is meant to be consumed, to be digested, and to be understood. With that consideration, I can't just do everything I want, because then there's no consideration for this broader context. There's no consideration for how this relates to everything else. If something is too unfamiliar, as we determined, we can't even really classify it as the thing we want it to be, because it would just be foreign to us in the sense that we couldn't even conceptualize it. But the more familiar something is, the easier it is to categorize it, the easier it is to distinguish it from everything else. We can distinguish a lion from a tiger, from a leopard, from a bobcat, from a house cat, even though they're all fucking cats. They're all of the family Felidae, or whatever. I'm not a biologist, sorry. But they're all in this container, but there's still uniqueness among all of these individual things. And the uniqueness exists in the comparison. The uniqueness exists in the validation of the other. So rather than get yourself all worked up, rather than get yourself all obsessed with being original, with doing something that no one else has ever done before, rather than worrying about, oh, this music's for me. If your music's for you, why are you sharing it? Instead, just try and be yourself. Be unique due to your taste, due to the particular way that your brain filters the external information and regurgitates it as your own unique thought, creation, artwork, whatever. No one will ever hear Beethoven's Fifth the way that you hear it. No one will hear the Star-Spangled Banner the way you hear it. No one will see the Mona Lisa the way you see it. You are unique in your observations, in your analysis, in your understanding. So why do you need to be original in the labor that you do, in the trade craft, in the skills that you execute? The whole point of skills is that you're taking what other people have figured out and you apply it. You didn't come up with that on your own. You didn't create a guitar on your own. You didn't create a scale on your own. You didn't create a piano on your own. You didn't create a chord on your own. Other people did that first, and they were just trying to identify patterns they saw elsewhere. They were building patterns on top of patterns. So if you want to come up with something new, Look for a pattern that's existed before and add to that. Don't worry about how original you are. Worry about how unique you are, how many influences you're taking in. But the whole point of this is to say, don't worry about it. Like, if you're watching this on YouTube, hopefully it got cut out, but Wolg, the guy who rated me, Wolg is someone who I would consider incredibly unique. Wolg is one of the most unique composers, artists, musicians that I know of. Without question. I wouldn't call Wolg original. Maybe that's an insulting thing to say, but hopefully it's seen as a compliment. Because I can relate to Wolg. I can relate to what he's saying, to what he's doing, to what he's creating, and I can compare that to other things and see, oh, there's the pattern that I noticed from elsewhere. Here's where it deviates, and the interesting things about that deviation. That makes me feel good. That makes me feel enriched by that unique perspective. So don't stress about being original, and don't fool yourself into thinking you're trying to make music for yourself. Usually when you say, I'm making music only for myself, but I still will share it so that other people can give me feedback on it and tell me what they think about it, is that you are most likely afraid of critique. You don't want to be told that what you're doing is wrong or bad. But that is the thing. Like, if you're being unique, who the fuck cares? There's so many layers to this. You are much better served in the long run, I feel like. Just living your life and understanding that, hey, when you make a song, you're making the song for other people, not just for yourself. So some of your considerations should be, well, what would other people expect me to do? What would make other people enjoy this? Whether that's being originality or originality, whether that would be taking something familiar and turning it on its head, or synthesizing two familiar things into something completely new. No, and these comments I think are very valid. Like, John Cage was in many ways original, but I would say John Cage was unique. Because John Cage was just trying to illustrate the patterns that we see around us. 433 is not a piece about silence. 433 is about listening to what's going on around you, looking at the world that you're in, and being forced to confront the sounds that you don't think about. Those sounds have always existed. Those sounds have always been there. But you don't notice them until you're forced to confront them. That's unique. Not quite original, that's unique. Tom Waits, again, I wouldn't call him original, I'd call him unique, because he's just making fucking country music. He's making blues. He's making bluegrass. He's not making something original. He's using something that everyone else has done at some, I mean, not everyone else, but a lot of fucking people have done. But his voice, the way that he experiences that music is what is unique. And for me, the line is exactly what M is saying. If something is original, if something is truly original, we might not even understand what it is, because it's something that we have no frame of reference for. H.P. Lovecraft, racist, homophobic, bigoted as he was great at capturing the essence of true originality. Cosmic horrors, masses of flesh and bone and shapes and physics that don't match with what we do, and those things are so truly alien, so truly original, the human mind could not conceive of them. The human mind could not rationalize them, and so the human mind would collapse into insanity. That's originality. What we cannot actually understand. And once something has become understood, it's no longer original. It's just unique. And M's making a great point. Even the way we think about the world, even the way we think about anything, is through a familiar lens. That's why we perceive aliens as being bipedal humanoids, because we are bipedal humanoids. We relate them to ourselves. There's a very good chance if we saw an alien, we wouldn't even know it's there. Because what are we supposed to be looking for? We don't know. It's alien. It's original. Unidentified flying objects all seem to be familiar shapes. Did you notice that? They all seem to be things that we would expect them to be. Who's to say that you have to have a flying saucer? Again, I really hope that this is not seen as some sort of objective, matter-of-fact, always 100% correct thing. This is my perspective. This is my opinion. I think that I've reasoned it out. I think that I've created a fair defense of my stance, but I don't expect all of you to agree with every single thing that I say. And I hope that it gives you something to think about in your own writing, in your own music, in your own artwork, in your own life. Don't worry about being original. Just, be unique. Have fun with it. If you're watching this on YouTube, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, do all the YouTube stuff. Check me out on Twitch. That's where I do this stream every Thursday. Check me out on Twitter, twitter.com/MusarMakes. Pretty much everything is MusarMakes. Patreon, if you want to support the stream, support the videos. I'm still figuring out rewards for that and stuff. If you have suggestions, drop them in the comments. So if you're watching this on YouTube, this will be where we say goodbye.